It's summertime, so let's make some mango wine.
To make this wine, really simple. You're gonna need some mango. We opted for frozen mango chunks. Could we have used fresh ones? Yes. However, I suggest, even if you use fresh, to cut it, put it in the freezer, and then defrost it. Because what happens is, it helps to break up the cell walls a little bit better, helps for better extraction. By the way, 2 pounds, please, frozen. Then, we're going to also use some sugar. Now, we're just using plain white sugar. Can you use other sugars? Yes, but make sure they're fermentable. Like erythritol and stevia are not fermentable. They won't actually work. But brown sugar, probably gonna leave a really weird taste with the mango. Not sure I'd do that. That's why we used white sugar. Sometimes simpler is better.
What we're opting to do here is to make the mango flavor really come forward. So everything else that we're gonna add to it is going to be neutral or help aid the fermentation process.
And we went through a lot of permutations on what to do with this. And my first instinct was, this is way too simple. It's just too simple. There's nothing added to it. So we went looking for some other dried fruits and things that we could add, and we kept coming back to, but it really should be about the mango. So that's where we opted to go. Now, we are gonna be using a little bit of yeast nutrient in this. This is just 2 grams of fermento and a little bit of water. We're also going to be adding tea. Now, this is just plain old black tea. I'm not even gonna mention the brand name. You know why? It just doesn't matter. It's just black tea. This is not for flavor. It does not add flavor. Say it with me, folks.
It doesn't
add
flavor.
It's here for the tannic aspect that tea gives. And the reason I'm making a big deal is every single time we use tea in a brew, somebody says, can I use Earl Grey tea? Can I use this kind of tea? Can I use that kind of tea? Of course you can, but it won't be the same, and it will not really alter the flavor enough to make it worthwhile using some fancy tea. You want something that has lots of tannins. You know what has the most tannins? Black tea. Therefore, just use black tea. The brand doesn't even matter because they all offer tannins, and like I said, it's not offering enough flavor to make a difference. Therefore, you probably won't even notice it whether you use the fancy stuff or the cheap stuff. So just use black tea, okay? Another word about black tea, this is less of a rant, is it's not important how much tea you make. I could make the whole container of tea if I use 1 tea bag. I'm just using 1 tea bag. So I have about 2 cups here, but I could have made it 1 cup, could have made it 6 cups. It really wouldn't matter. The extraction is the same amount of tea. Because we're diluting it over a whole gallon anyway, it really doesn't matter, okay? You also do not want to over-extract. Like, usually 3 to 5 minutes for tea is plenty. This is already approaching that level, so we're almost ready to pour the tea into here. We do have our sugar in here already though.
So as Brian was saying, it really isn't about how much water you're using to steep the tea, and it matters what the temperature of the water is and how long you steep the tea.
And how many tea leaves you're using.
Yes.
If I had put 2 tea bags in here, it would be twice the strength. Now, here's a real head twister. I could use 5 cups of water, 1 tea bag, or I could use 1 cup of water and 5 tea bags. Guess what? The one with 5 tea bags is still going to be stronger tea even when it's diluted out over the full gallon. Amazing how that works. So that's why we use 1 tea bag. It seems to be enough for about a gallon. If you're making more, you do want to scale that up. Not the amount of water, the amount of tea bags. Very important.
So all of our equipment has been sanitized in the red bucket of sanitization. And I purposely kept the lid, as I'm dripping sanitizer liquid all over me, out and apart so I can show you the infamous foam layer that is in the top
about
of
1.5 millimeters thick.
It's really thin, as you can see there, but it is foam and it is squishy, and so
that's what makes the seal.
Sits in the top of the lid, so when you screw it down, it's going to compress against the top of your vessel, thus creating the seal.
The sugar, by the way, we're using 2 pounds plain old white sugar. There is a little bit of sugars in the mangoes. Let me go through that because people have been asking, how do we calculate the sugars from the mangoes? In a 1 pound bag of our mango chunks, we have 3 servings. Each serving is 22 grams of sugars. So multiply that by 3, we get 66. Multiply that by 2 for 2 pounds, we get 132. 132 divided by 454, which is how many grams are in a pound, we get 0.29 pounds of sugars coming from the mangoes. Now, whether all of that would be actually used or not is up for some debate. It might happen, it might not. Can the yeast get to it? Doesn't matter. we could mash the heck out of these and it wouldn't matter. They're only gonna get to what they get to, okay? So that's just something important. So it might not ever use up that full 0.29 pounds. But anyway, we know, and we're telling you now, that there is 0.046 points or gravity, specific gravity, in 1 pound of sugar in a 1 gallon brew. So I'd take that 0.29 figure and multiply that by 0.046, and that gives me 0.013. So that means exactly 13 points of gravity, or 1.013, is how much sugars the fruit is adding. Pretty minimal. I don't usually even count it because that's the absolute maximum that it possibly can extract. In most cases, it's doing 6 to 8 points for 2 pounds of fruit. Just doesn't make much difference in the final brew.
So, in researching this recipe, I found many different variations of the mango wine, and many of them just took all the ingredients, tossed them in the blender, blended them to oblivion, and then fermented them. Well, to me, that was sounding like a big pulpy mess come cleanup time or racking time, as it were. So we're not doing that. We're walking on the edge. We're living our life to the extreme. And instead, we're going to use a brew bag, a weighted brew bag that is, and just dump our mango right in there.
So basically, I just made sweet tea.
Basically.
Just thought about that.
Super sweet.
Just made really sweet tea. Now, I poured the tea in now because A, it's a hot liquid, and B, it was done steeping. So I didn't want it to over steep because then it gets that weird mouthfeel thing, which we want some of that weird mouthfeel thing, but not that much. That's the tannins. But we don't want it to be overpowering to where it's just nasty. But it's not really dissolving quite yet. It's okay. All right, so.
Do you want some water or do you want the brew bag?
I probably want to put some water in here and get this mixed up. The idea here is we have a lot of solids in the sugar, so I want to put some water in there and start getting the mixing process going. You're going to have to pour it.
No worries. How much do you want?
Up to about.
The midway?
Yeah, maybe to that line. We'll just go right halfway. If we poured all the water in now, we might overflow once we put the mango in, so we want to just put about half of it in there. That way we can get a good splash going when we start mixing. Right there seems about right. But now I'm going to need something to mix this with. And for that, I think I would like my spoon of unusual size. Okay, and this is the spoon of unusual size, also known as a paddle. It's really designed for a 5-gallon fermenter, but it's more funny for me to just use it in the 1 gallon.
Now this is our little big mouth bubbler. It is the little big mouth bubbler with the spigot.
I don't like the spigot.
He doesn't like the spigot. It
okay. Spits at me.
It
spit at me when I lifted up the jug today.
It did.
She had it upside down on here draining, and there was water in the bottom of the spigot. As I flipped it over, it spilled all over my lap, which you can't see right now, but my crotch is soaked, okay? Let's just say that.
They didn't need to know that.
Well, they know it now. This thing, the last time we used it in a brew, when I opened it, it worked fine, and then I closed it, and there's a safety in it so that it won't overflow. It spit out at me. I'm like, okay, I don't like the spigot. I'm an auto siphon guy, can I say? Okay, so using warm water along with the hot tea is helpful in getting this to mix. Now, I don't have to be careful. See how much splashing I'm doing? In the beginning phases of a fermentation, you want aeration. As a matter of fact, not aerating can be bad. It causes that sulfur rotten egg smell, which does age out in most cases. It just takes more time. So if you want to prevent that, splash. You know?
Just don't splash your neighbor.
Yeah, be a 5-year-old. If you're making a very large batch, or you just don't feel like doing what I'm doing right now, you can use the drill attachments and put it on your drill and, and do all that. And it works really great. I just don't do that because it's really hard to talk over that on a video. And I never remember to get the drill out when we're getting ready to start. But you do want all of your sugars dissolved. It lets you get an accurate reading, if nothing else. I mean, the yeast will probably find those sugars anyway, as evidenced by a video that you might have seen already. We like to mix it up, that way we get an accurate reading and know where we're starting at. Alrighty, at this point, I'm gonna add in my yeast nutrient because it's inert, it's not alive, the heat won't matter, it's not gonna hurt anything. But it's all nicely dissolved now. I find that it's chunky when you first pour the fermento in the water, and no amount of whisking changes that. But let it sit for like 5 or 10 minutes, and then it just dissolves, and it's beautiful. So that's in. You give that a quick mix for no apparent reason, doesn't really matter. And now we're gonna start putting in the mango, which means we need the bag.
Okay, so our fermentation bag is actually a nut milk bag, and we really like using these because it's a super fine mesh. That way it's going to keep as many of the solids in the bag, but still let those yeasties get in there and do their work.
Yeah, yeast are microscopic. They can fit through the holes.
We're also going to be using this glass fermentation weight to help hold the bag down. That way it's going to keep our solids from floating, so that way we don't have to worry so much about them getting oxygen. I like to put the fermentation weight in before the bag is in there because it won't hit the bottom.
I like to hold the bag up so that it doesn't hit the bottom.
It still makes me nervous regardless.
Many hands make light work. Okay, so while she holds that, speaking of many hands, I'm gonna open up these bags of mango chunks, which have not been prepped any other way other than defrosted. Smells like mango. And very, very carefully and precisely dump them in. They're mostly defrosted. I say mostly because it's not totally defrosted. And that's it, okay? You can mash them up if you really want to, and you know, maybe I will. Watch, here, I'll do it this way. The nice, clean way. Keep in mind, my hands have been in and out of sanitizer fluid, so they're clean. Just giving it a good mash. If you don't like sticky or nasty, squishy things, this is probably not the thing for you to do. Just saying. I'm instantly regretting this decision. If
you want to mash them without getting your hands in it, you can always sanitize like a wooden spoon or even a potato masher. And once you get everything in the bag, you can just smash away in there. Just be careful not to disrupt your vessel.
Yeah, and you don't want to squeeze too hard. You don't want to break the bag or anything.
And make sure you don't dribble it down the side.
Oh well, that's why they call me the dribbler. All right, so I'm going to tie the bag up.
That does really smell good, doesn't it?
It really smells good. She said, we need to make mango wine, and I was like, why?
This is why.
Yeah. And I'm tying it, and now I'm hoping that I can kind of curl this under and get the weight on top so that when I drop this into the must, it goes all the way to the bottom and hopefully stays there, sort of, mostly.
Remember that fine mesh that I was so excited about? Well, one of the problems with that is that it tends to trap gases because the mesh is so very fine. So if you can submerge it and hold it submerged for a period of time, use a spoon, whatever you have available to you, let that gas just come out, whatever the proper word is for that, and then it should stay submerged.
All right, we need more water.
You want me to do it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go to about like here-ish, up to
there.
Okay, we used about 3,300 milliliters of water, which is just shy of a gallon. But you have to think about it from this perspective. This is a 1.4 gallon container. The bag of fruit takes up some space, okay? We also added 2 cups of tea, so that's, I don't know, like 3 or 4 milliliters. So we really did add pretty much almost exactly a gallon of water to this, which is kind of cool because that means when we go to rack this off, take the bag out, get rid of the lees, we'll probably have very close to a 1 gallon actual brew. But the next thing we want to do is give this a quick mix just to make sure everything's together. It's a little more difficult when you have a bag in there.
So are we taking a gravity reading?
Yes, we are going to take a gravity reading. That's the next thing I want to do.
All right, so as you already know, because Brian already talked about it, the gravity from the fruit is going to be very minimal. Now, those fruits have not extracted their sugars yet, so those won't be...
Some of them actually have. The juices were going in.
That's true.
So
okay.
I don't really take it into account.
Okay.
It does make it a slightly less accurate system, but it's the best we got, so that's what we're gonna go with. All right, a little bit more about the precision and accuracy of that. We know that the fruit can add a maximum of 13 points to this. Now we also know that some of that already came out in the form of the juices. And we also know that it may not put out the full 13 points. So how do you actually calculate that in? I really don't bother. I don't worry about it. And here's why. What got in already got in, and it added a few points to this gravity, most likely. Anything else, I'm not that concerned, because let me just explain. Let's say if it was 10 points different, right? 10 points did not get accounted for. That equates to a grand total of 1.3% ABV. And that's the absolute worst case scenario. Commercial wineries don't have to be that precise. They can be off by 2% in either direction. So I've heard 2 or 2.5, something like that. So we don't have to worry about being off by 1.3 because we're still within the legal limit of what would be considered accurate. And it's homebrew, guys. I mean, come on. 12% versus 13%. Does it really matter? We have seen people that give us readings of like 9.7652 ABV. I'm like, there's no way you got 5 digits past the decimal point in accuracy. It's just not possible. And I know calculators give those numbers, but that doesn't mean it's accurate. I generally go to 1 decimal point, and even then I pretty much round off to half or a whole. I don't really even worry about it.
The real reason why we stress taking gravity readings in the first place isn't really to figure out what kind of ABV you have. It is to know what the process is going on in your fermentation.
Yep.
Whether the fermentation has completed, if you've potentially stalled, those kind of things are what we're utilizing the gravity readings for.
Exactly. By the way, this one is at 1.080. Does that sound a little bit on the low side to you? Yes, it does. You want to know why? As you add differing amounts of water, you do dilute it differently. So we did use a full gallon of water, maybe plus even a little bit. So we diluted it ever so slightly. If we only put the water to here, it might have been like 1.090, 092 or something like that. Does this bother me? No, and let me explain why. We're using a 13% tolerant yeast, which we'll get to the yeast in a second. So if I was to take that 1.080 and have it go dry to 1.000, I get 0.08, which I probably could have done that one in my head, times 135, which is my coefficient of choice. If you're not sure why I use that, we have a video explaining it, because everybody asked me about that one too. And I get 10.8% alcohol. Now, we're using a 13% yeast. Does that mean I could put a little bit more sugar in here? Yes, absolutely we could. However, I'm pretty okay with 10.5 to 11%. I think it'll really let the fruit come through that much better. And you know what? If it's too dry, we can always sweeten it and pasteurize and make it taste the way we want to. It's a nice, safe number. When you start going higher, higher, higher gravity, that's when you could potentially have more potential for stalling, problems, off flavors, fusels, various issues. So to avoid all those, we just keep the gravities a little bit lower and stay to usually under 15% alcohol by volume. Seems to work really, really well. Speaking of yeast, we're using this one.
Côte de Blanc. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong.
No, actually, that's about right.
And yay me. The reason why we're using Côte de Blanc is that it is supposed to be the perfect yeast for when you want to make a fruit-based wine, regardless of whether it is a red wine or a white wine. Mango is a mango
It's yellow.
colored wine. So I thought the Côte Blanc would be the right choice for us.
How much yeast do you use? Well, here's the thing. A lot of people seem to think that the amount of yeast you use determines the amount of alcohol you get. Not at all. All it does is really determines how fast your yeast might start up, because how much of a colony is already pre-made versus how much has to get going. I'm sure there's more science to it than that. That's the simplified version. We tend to use a whole packet at a time. And this is Red Star, which means I have to get another tool in order to use it, because they're not paper, I can't tear it. I need to use scissors. So Red Star, if you ever watch any of our videos, please, please, please make your packets terrible. And I mean, like, not terrible, but terrible. Yeah. And I'm gonna pour the whole thing in. And once I get to the bottom like that, what do?
Whack your
packet. There's a reason for that. It's static electricity, especially in the Red Star foil packets like this. Stuff just gets stuck in there. Now, I know Red Star probably uses a foil packet because they think that it makes it last longer and it preserves better. Well, in my experience, which we've been doing this for several years, and I've gone through dozens and dozens and dozens of packets of yeast, it doesn't make any difference. We keep them all in the fridge and they all lasted the same amount of time. I haven't seen Red Star last any longer than any other yeast, simply because they used foil. So
yeah, we haven't tested that, so we
that's,
don't
in our
know
experience,
the
we haven't
science.
seen it happen. We have not actually run a scientific test on that, and I got yeast all over this tiny whisk. I mixed that up because you want the yeast to get in there a little bit. It will on its own anyway, but this way it hydrates it just a little bit. And I am going to put the lid on it. But yeah, it always just bugs me that I have to go get a pair of scissors in order to open up a packet of yeast. It's just not necessary. Here's where that tiny little thin seal, you give it everything you got, pack it in there, and it should be fine.
So you might be wondering, hey, Brian and Derek, aren't you guys giving Northern Brewer a little bit of a hard time? Well, yes, but not really, because if you notice, we still use the little big mouth
yeah, it's a great product.
Like, all the time.
I just wish it had a better seal.
So one of our favorite things about this, not only is the ease of using the larger fermentation size for solids such as a mango-based wine, but also the larger mouth for getting those solids in and out, but it's this. It comes with its own airlock, with its own cute little stopper that fits in the lid perfectly without any slippage, without any pop outs.
They don't ever pop out.
It's a thing of beauty.
Now, one thing I want to say. Is it ultimately super important that your seal is 100%? No. It may affect your airlock working, okay? You might not see any activity. And we've seen this in our VIP group and a lot of people even commenting here. Just because you don't see activity in your airlock doesn't mean it's not fermenting. And it doesn't mean it's a bad thing, okay? A lot of people ferment open, where they don't even have a lid. And it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly safe to do so as long as you don't have cats.
And fruit flies and
right.
all sorts of things.
So, you know, those are reasons why we use these airlocks. But if your seal isn't perfect, you can just look in the side. If you see little tiny bubbles coming up the side, it's fermenting. No reason to worry about it, okay? You're not going to spoil, most likely. The way things spoil is when a fruit fly gets in there, or if there was an infection to begin with, or something wasn't cleaned properly. Now, when I say fruit fly, I mean literal flies. They can get in. That's why we use sanitizer fluid in our airlocks, because it tends to kill them rather than let them swim through it. If you watch, most bugs can actually live in water for quite some time, like longer than you think they should be able to. So they can get through that and into your brew and leave all kinds of nastiness behind. Not really something you want. So that's why the airlock.
If we have a really active brew and we have to replace the airlock because we just got gunk everywhere, we're going to refill that with a neutral spirit rather than sanitizer liquid, unless we're doing another brew and we happen to have sanitizer liquid available to us. The neutral spirit is going to react the same way as a sanitizer liquid will and kill those bugs so they can't get
By
through.
neutral spirit, she means like a vodka or a whiskey or, you know, just a nasty scotch that you don't like. So what are we going to do with this now?
We're going to let it sit.
It's going to go for probably a few hours to a couple of days, and we'll be back to show you what it looks like once it has started fermentation. Okay, so it's been 11 days, which is coming up close on 2 weeks by my math, and I don't see a lot of airlock activity here. I don't see a lot of little bubbles on the side. Might be time. So let's just get this out of here and start taking our gravity reading. Okay, so we started at 1.080 original gravity, and today it is at 0.990. Now this comes up often where people say, well, how can it go below 1.000? Easily. Ethanol actually has a much, much lower than 1.000 specific gravity. So because water is 1.000 mixed with ethanol, that means it can go below 1.000. It doesn't happen a lot, but this is actually going to be a very dry brew, which means we'll probably end up back sweetening this down the line. But for now, I'm just going to dump this sample back in.
Do you want the lid off?
I'm going to take the lid off first, though, because that's a little tiny hole. I don't think I'm not that good. I will spill it all over the place. And while we open it, I can take a look and see that everything's still good. We don't want to disturb it while it's open, and I'm just going to pour very carefully. You saw some of that. Yeah, you spilled some. It's just a thing. Take a smell. It doesn't smell unpleasant. There's nothing in there that smells, you know, that makes me go, oh. There's nothing like that. Nothing makes me retch. That's a good thing.
Now, it will smell
like fermentation.
different than just mango. It'll smell like fermentation, as
Yeah,
Brian
you'll
just said.
get some alcohol smell in there. It might smell a little rougher than you like, but as long as it doesn't smell vile. Like if you smell it and you start retching from the smell and it makes you want to throw up, that's not good, okay? But something that smells green or young or a little bit rough to drink, That's fine. This is 11 days old. I mean, you know, what were you like at 11 days old? I know I was pretty rough. So I'm gonna put the airlock back in. Hey, you know, it's just stream of consciousness here. It comes. This is why we don't like to use scripts. I like to be just as surprised as you guys at what comes out of my mouth. Anyway, so what are we gonna do with this now?
We're gonna let it sit.
Right after I take a note. But let me also calculate the ABV at this point. What's going to happen is this will sit for another week, and we'll make sure it's really done. It's still very cloudy and everything, so I don't see any need in racking it right now. But obviously, it's probably done. So 1.080, 1.080 minus 0.990 is 0.090. Or 0.90 for those of you that don't like the O thing for zeros, times 135, and we get 12.15% alcohol, and I believe that's pretty much right around the tolerance of our yeast, which is probably why it went totally dry.
Predictions for this brew. After a week, and we take the gravity reading again, if it has remained the same, that means at this stage, fermentation is completely done. However, I have a sneaky feeling that this is going to need more mango.
Oh yeah, I think we have more to put in too, don't we?
So when we add that more mango,
it's effectively step feeding, sort of, because there's a little bit more sugars there, so it may ferment that mango even more, but it may also just add the flavors. We'll find out as we get to that point. Now, if you notice right now, I'm shaking it up and see the airlock's going crazy? This is known as degassing, but I'm doing two things. I'm degassing it, so getting some of those gases out, which don't taste so great, and that's some of the smell that some people find off-putting in fermentation. There is no sulfur smell, by the way, I just want to point that out. None at all. We actually rarely get that. But the smell can be affected by those gases because, you know, they're fermentation gases. It's basically, you know, it's the yeast poops. Nobody wants that. I mean, that's what it is. Nobody really wants to be smelling that. It's just the way it is. That's the easiest way to put it. That's what it is. It's basically what it is. But so is ethanol. So, you know, hey. But anyway, it does that. It gets some of the gases out, and it keeps that cap, that bag in there, wet, because you definitely do not want that to dry out. Once it starts to dry out, that's when things that we don't want to happen could happen. Mold and stuff like that. Not a good thing. So I'm just gonna continue doing this, but we will see you guys in a week. Almost a week and a half later, and let's see if it's still a 0.990 or 0.990 if we're being completely technical. Everything was sanitized. You can tell, it's all drippy. I'm gonna call that 0.990. It might be like 0.989, but yeah, 0.990. So this is done, which means we can rack it and move this onto conditioning, which will be the second phase of the fermentation. All right, for the racking process, what we wanna do is take the lid off and take a visual inspection. I don't see any mold. I don't see anything growing. I don't see anything that makes me think that this might not be good. I didn't gag as I smelled it. I know the bar is kind of low here, but this is questions that come up. And I'm making a joke, but I'm not really making a joke at all when you think about it. If I retched and gagged from the smell, that's a problem, or potentially a problem. If I saw green and black hairy things floating in there, that's a problem, okay? We don't have any of that, therefore, not a problem. So, let's pull that bag out. Oh, this is gonna be nasty.
I don't know why you're squeezing mango.
That's a good question. Why am I squeezing mango?
Yeah, don't squeeze
Here, goes in there.
That's fine.
Now I gotta wash my hands. Okay, so we put that into a colander that's sitting in a bowl so it can catch any juice that might wanna come out of there. Because I'm not squeezing that, it's kind of gross. So, what we're gonna do is use an auto siphon to siphon the rest of it. And we just, you know, we have another little big mouth bubbler right down here, see? And we have, this end goes in here, and I just go about halfway down and get it going. You can hear it. And now you don't hear it because it's actually just siphoning. Set it down, away we go.
This is our racking procedure, and I will put a link somewhere to show you what our full racking procedure is if you need more information. So we're racked, we sanitized the bag, we sanitized a pickling weight. We're gonna put said pickling weight into our bag.
But why do we need a bag?
We're gonna add stuff.
I felt this went dry. Well, we felt this went totally dry, 0.990, which is very, very dry, highly alcoholic, and it feels like it might be kind of thin. And even if it isn't, I want to add another level of complexity. So we got some dried mango, which is awesome, by the way. This is organic dried mango, no sugar added. It's just dried mangoes. We get them at Costco. I eat them as snacks. They're really, really, really awesome.
He was actually slightly irritated that we were going to be using these in a brew today because he wants them all for himself.
Exactly. So I am using 6 ounces, which is about 170 grams of dried mango. Why didn't I use more? Because I want to eat them. That's why. Otherwise, you can put more in there if you really want to. The bag is about 2.5 pounds, so you could put all of them in there if you really want to. You get a lot of mango flavor that way. Why dried over more fresh? Very good question. One, dried has an aged smokiness to it, a level of complexity that doesn't come from fresh. And 2, less mess. We're in conditioning phase now. I want this to clear out. I don't want to just keep adding more. You saw that milkiness come out of the mango. You can put it in.
Well, I have condensed the bag to its smallest capacity, which I can do because I'm using dried fruit rather than fresh fruit.
I got an idea though.
Without getting it all juicy.
It sort of works.
So Brian's doing a thing. I thought he was going to do a different thing. He should do the other thing.
What thing?
Your fancy knot thing. Just do it down
Yeah, but I don't
here.
want it to. But then we have a tail that can like float. All right, fine.
But there's no fruit in the tail.
But you don't want it sticking out. Okay, when you're in secondary or conditioning phase, you want to have as little air in there as possible, because now we don't have as much CO2 being produced, so the chances of a contamination or a mold or something are a little higher, okay? So that's why I'm concerned about making the bag as small and compact as possible. That's what she's getting at. Here we go. Ta-da! Yay, it's not floating. That's perfect. You do not want it to float, okay? We didn't want it to be sticking out of the liquid. I gotta go wash my hands. All right, so I'm gonna put the lid and airlock back on because there is still gas in here. Is there a chance that this can start fermenting again? A little bit, yeah. Gotta go backwards to go forwards and then catch the threads. It's hard to do when you're talking and using only one hand. Anyway, so there is a chance that fermentation can start up again, and it's okay. We'll just let it keep going. How long will this be in here? Probably a few weeks, because dried fruit can take a little bit longer to do full extraction. We want to get as much flavor out of that dried mango as we can get. So 6 ounces dried like that, it's kind of leathery. Yeah, I'm gonna say probably 2 to 3 weeks. And once this starts to clear out a little bit, we know it's pretty much ready, and we'll be back at that point to show you what comes next. Okay, so when last we left it, it was at 0.990, and we added back some, much to my chagrin, 6 ounces of my precious dried mango in a bag. And it actually started re-fermenting a little bit. So our numbers are gonna be slightly off for ABV. They'll be a little bit higher because it's difficult to calculate exactly how much that would be. But I do wanna get them out, and here it is. And they turn to mush, just turn to mush. They rehydrated, obviously, and turn to mush. So I'm gonna give the bag a little bit of a squeeze, which I know puts some gook back into the mead. It's just a way to, or the wine, actually. This is not mead, this is wine. And I'm just gonna throw that inside and go wash my hands. I'll be right back. It smells good though. And because it re-fermented a little bit, I do wanna take another reading just to make sure that we're really safe and done and all that good stuff. I'm fairly certain, but you know, it's always good to check. Okay, I could probably figure out how much sugar is in the dried mangoes because this went back to 0.990. So because I saw some activity, I'm gonna guarantee that there was a little bit of sugars in there, but I don't know offhand. I'd have to check the bag, and it's in the cupboard behind me, and it's kind of like put away. So I'll do that before, well, you'll see it right in here. I'll show you, don't worry. But anyway, we are at 0.990. Let's take a small little taste and see how this is. It's not super clear, but we did just disturb everything. Any yeast that was down there, we totally disturbed that. So let me give this a smell.
Poker face. Give me the poker face.
I'm trying.
I know.
All right, so, yeah, we don't want to give it away because we're going to be doing a tasting. And, you know, if we tell you now, then it kind of ruins the surprise, right? So I am going to, however, pour this into the next fermenter.
Because it is time to rack.
And it looks like we have a lot. So this would be more than a gallon. I don't want to put it into a 1 gallon container. You see the headspace, right? We've talked about headspace before. It's not as big of a deal as people make it out to be. You don't want to oxidize, but having headspace, we've never experienced a problem. Thousands and thousands of people that have done it have never experienced a problem. So consider this an experiment in oxidation. But anyway, racking, very simple. Go from source to destination. Source must be higher. There's wispy yeast at the bottom here. There's some stuff. I'm putting the cap back on. The destination must be lower than the source. Put this all the way in and give it, well, halfway in. Put this halfway in, you give it a few pumps. You get it going. Then you put it all the way to the bottom. You just walk away. Just walk away. It's one of those days, folks.
Don't walk away. You want to actually see what's going on because you might overflow. We are speaking from experience.
Sorry, it's just one of those days, okay? I'm getting my mix all tucked up. And now that we've racked it, put the lid back on, put an airlock back on. Then what do we do?
We're gonna let it sit.
Actually, I'm put my label on it. Okay, so this is just gonna go sit in the fermentation station until it clears out again, and we'll be back with an update at that point. This has been sitting for about 2 weeks now, and we were hoping it would clear a little bit more. Now, a word on that. A few people have said, hey, you could have used pectic enzyme. It's a natural thing. And you know what? They're probably right. Is it natural? Well, here's the thing. If you dig deep enough and you rationalize well enough, anything is natural, okay? With us, it's not so much about being natural, it's about keeping it simple. We have people all over the world that watch our show, and one of the things we hear all the time is they can't even get the yeast we're using, so I can't really expect people to find pectic enzyme either. So we don't use it either, and it's more just a keeping it simple kind of thing. A little bit of cloudiness doesn't really bother me. Could you actually extract slightly more sugars using it? Yes, that's actually a fact. And does it help some things clear? Maybe a mango? Yeah, possibly. It might help. There are other methods for clearing that we just don't really do, but if you do those, make sure you follow the manufacturer's instructions. Okay,
so for us, we're gonna go ahead and rack this.
Yeah, and we're gonna do our final preliminary taste. I mean, what do we call this? We need a name. What would you guys call it if it's like our taste it before we bottle it to make sure that it's right taste?
Yeah.
What would you call that? All right. There's lots of threads. Yay, I'm done. Okay. Again, visual inspection. Looks good. Smells like mango. It really does. It actually smells a little. Yeah, that's a good thing. I'm just saying, it smells like mango. So we're gonna rack it to a pitcher. All right, time for a little sample. And we do this before we bottle to make sure that it's, you know, the way we want it to be. It smells pleasant. This is right now about 6 weeks old. It's like a month and 14 days, month and 15 days. Doesn't smell overly young. I'm torn.
You're torn because why?
It's dry.
It is. And also why?
Because mango should be sweet. It's dry. It's dry. The mango flavor's there, though. I kind of want to sweeten this a bit. Wow, what's your opinion?
I'm still getting the sweet mango flavor, and then I'm getting the acidity and astringency of fermentation.
Okay.
So I think the sweetness is just to counter the astringency that's inherent in fermentation rather than the lack of sweetness of mango.
So you're saying with time this will be good?
Possibly.
So what is your recommendation?
I could drink it as is, but if you can't, then I think we should sweeten it.
Let me get another taste. I don't know that I would be able to drink this as is. I don't know that I would choose to drink this as is. I will say this much though, it may have a slight haze, but it's actually quite clear. It's really not bad at all. It comes across as like a light white wine with mango flavor. Mm-hmm. Be really good for cooking with, actually.
Marinades.
I'm torn.
Oh, you want to just put a little bit of sugar in it and see what happens?
Well, you see, here's the thing, and this is part of the decision-making process. If we do not sweeten this, if we just leave it as is, we can put this into bottles, it'll stay shelf-stable, room temperature for years, okay? If we back sweeten this, we will probably need to pasteurize it. That does add some complexity to the day and to everything, so that's part of the decision-making process. As weird as that may sound, some people will say, I can't be bothered with pasteurization, I'll just drink it dry. And you know what? More power to you, there's nothing wrong with that. And that's where I'm at. Do I need to sweeten this just because of what she's saying, or does it actually need sweetening? That's a tough call. That's a personal preference.
It is a personal preference. And this is why we can't honestly give you our opinion on whether you should back sweeten or not, because it's not us who's going to be drinking your brew, it's you. And so you have to make that decision for yourself.
Well, there's more to it than that. I happen to be diabetic, so for me, adding sugars is always taking a little bit more of a risk. By not adding sugars, it means I can potentially drink more of this if I chose to, or have it more often if I chose to. Based on all the factors present, I'm gonna go with, let's not sweeten this, let's get to bottling. Okay, it's time to bottle. For that, we use a bottling wand. That is a straight piece of tubing that has a springy thingy on the end. Also, it's known as some kind of valve that has many different names, apparently, because people call it different things. But I like to put this in the end of the tubing, only about a ½ an inch or so. That way it's easily removed later on. This goes into the bottom of a bottle. Let me swap with you, babe. There we go. That goes in the bottom of a bottle. And you depress the springy thingy to allow the fluid to flow.
Pink.
This end, no cap, mind you, because we know there's no lease in the bottom, goes in the source. And as long as she's ready,
I'm ready.
Just a few strokes, and we have a siphon. And then, just walk away. No, I'm kidding, don't walk away. Then I'll just take over, and this is where having two people is very, very helpful.
So as you can see, we have 1 liter and 4
750s.
Thank you.
750 milliliter.
Yes.
Yeah, we actually had a little bit more than a gallon of this one. And even, you notice some of these bottles are super, super full. But no video on making a wine or mead is complete without a tasting. But before we get to the tasting, what are we gonna do with all these bottles, Dorica?
We're gonna label them.
Yeah, I have to do the labeling. But one of them is gonna sit for a year. We might make one of them sit for 2 years on this one. I think it might actually get some improvement from 2 years. Plus, we don't drink as much as people think we do. We're probably gonna have one for 2 years anyway, might as well just mark it. And then this one, which will be the tastier, we're probably gonna drink that relatively soon. And then we have 2 others that can be drank at our leisure. Back with the tasting. All right, so we chose to not back sweeten this. Care to elaborate why?
Because we didn't want to go through the elaborate process that was going to be our special super secret pasteurization method.
It's not super secret, other people have done it, I just wanted to test it. I believe it'll work, and people have asked about it, so...
It will happen.
Yeah, we're gonna do it in another
future.
video. We don't wanna just spill the beans. I wanna actually do it so that we can prove the concept and show you. But anyway.
But also, we didn't back sweeten it because I personally didn't feel like it needed it. Brian did.
I kinda do.
He's on the cusp, but age, perhaps, as Brian's t-shirt is suggesting, may make this even better.
Oh, wait, clarity, color.
Clarity.
Okay, it looks like something that I don't want to mention.
It looks like champagne to me.
Let's go with that. That's not what I was thinking, but let's go with that. It's a little bit cloudy. I'd say it's like a 6 on the clarity scale, but it is actually clear. Like you can see through it, but it's got a haze.
In all honesty, I thought this was going to be a lot more cloudy than what it is.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm actually very pleased with its clarity.
On the smell, it actually smells nice and fresh.
Yeah, It does. It does. And sometimes mango can have a bit of a funk. And those of you who love and embrace the mango life that it is know what I'm talking about. Brian,
We
unfortunately,
have a history with mango.
knows it far too well.
We had a mango tree at our old house.
It was an excellent mango tree.
I really wish we had it now.
Those
because
mangoes
I really
were
like mangoes now.
fantastic. But I may have
OD'd
Brian
mangoes.
on mango.
She cut up like 30 mangoes in a huge bowl and served me mangoes like 20 times a day, okay? Like, after 4 or 5 days, I was like, I'm done. I don't like mangoes.
So I'm an island girl, haha. I grew up on an island in Florida, and the section of the island that we live on used to be pretty much a mango plantation. Like you
Half of it still
you can
is.
still see many of the mango trees that were planted there
We need to
for
steal
that
some.
for that very purpose. So
Uproot some
we
trees.
have on our property we have 2 ginormous full-grown ancient mango trees, and so we did everything mango because they were right there.
But they don't do anything with the mangoes now?
No, the squirrels seem to have gotten
Oh.
more aggressive in their mango consumption,
All right.
and they get them when they're still small, so
Oh.
they don't even get to
Weird.
mature. Yeah, it's kind of annoying.
Anyway, so yeah, she OD'd me on mangoes. It's only in recent years, like the last year or so, that I've actually been able to eat them. And now I actually appreciate them. I like them.
Yeah.
Like dried mangoes, I really, really like. Like you probably remember from earlier in this series when I reluctantly added my dried mango to this.
He didn't want to share. All right, so like Brian said, the aroma is very fresh. It's
I get mango.
Yes.
I definitely smell mango on the aroma, which is awesome. I'm also getting some greenness. The more I smell it, the stronger I get into the smell, the deeper I get, I should say. I do get some of the green. Now, when I say green, I don't mean like green, the color. Green as in young. Usually it's a little bit rougher edges, a little more astringent, a little harsher smelling. Some people say it's that rocket fuel smell. It's not that bad, okay? It's not there. But it has a little bit of the ethanol, a little bit of the harshness mixed with the mango. So it's a pleasant smell, but it's not overall extraordinary on the aroma. How's that?
time to drink.
Yeah. It's dry. It's very dry, 0.990. Let me take in a little trip. As it first touches my mouth, I actually taste a touch of sweetness. The fruity sweetness is there. Then as it goes midway, you're still tasting a little bit of the fruit, but your brain's a little bit confused because it's not sweet fruit. So you just have the mango flavor and it's almost astringent. It's even slightly bitter at that point. What also strikes me at that exact moment is that this is a little watery. It could use a little bit more mouthfeel. If it had more mouthfeel, a little more tannin added to it, I think that would definitely make this lack of sweetness a little bit smoother. Now,
Are you thinking what I'm thinking? I bet you are.
we've already bottled it though. We could oak it if we really wanted to. We might. On the finish, you can tell it's a dry finish. It's crisp, it's clean, it's short. And that's pretty much all I got to say on this.
I would have to agree about all those things. And that bitter, almost sour note that comes in, not at the very beginning, but
It's like in the middle.
closer to the beginning than I would want it to be, is something that I feel with time will smooth out, mellow out, not be so predominant. It may allow that beginning note of the mango flavor to continue farther through.
Yeah, I think that little bit of harshness there is just, consider it like a rough corner that'll just
Right.
wear down over time.
Yeah.
Now, people always ask, how do we know what's going to happen when something ages? We don't know for a fact. All we can do is go off of
Our experience.
what we've made before.
Yeah.
And hundreds and hundreds of wines, meads, beers, and ciders. And I mean literally hundreds of them. So,
And more often
we've
than
done it a
not,
lot.
it's those harsh edges that kind of mellow out and flatten out, like Brian described so eloquently just
Yeah,
before.
most of the time we left our stuff to age for a long time. We didn't try them in like 6 weeks. You know, we let them go and let them go, and those harsh edges just tend to go away. I mean, you taste them along the way, but to actually drink them, they were older.
Right. I also agree with Brian on the the almost wateriness. And that's what made me think, okay, mouthfeel comes from tannins, and oaking tends to ump up the mouthfeel along with the tannins and bring in some vanilla notes that may help smooth this out.
Okay, well, let me ask you a logistics question then. How would you like to oak this?
Well, do we have...
This is why we don't do it after it's been bottled.
Do we have any that are narrow enough...
I'd have to cut them.
...to go in, but none of them are narrow enough?
No, we used to use the spirals that are designed for bottles. But they don't really do much.
They're not as good as Ken. Ken has spoiled us.
Yeah. I mean, I could split some of Ken's stuff and stick them in bottles. Yeah, see? I think this time we'll just let it age. Maybe what we'll do next time, we'll try this. And if you guys have suggestions for a better way to handle this, let us know. Because, you know, we're always looking for better ways to show you things and to be able to do things. My thought is, instead of bottling it immediately after doing that tasting that has yet to be named, what if we do the tasting there and then decide, does it need more? Because usually like a quick taste isn't enough to really say, oh, is this good or not? Because we're finding this now. I didn't notice the wateriness earlier.
Right.
So if we had it still in the pitcher, even if we put a cover on the pitcher or something, we do the tasting and then say, you know what? Now here's what it needs.
Yeah.
Then we can do that, and then we can determine what to do.
I think that might be a better route.
Even if that delayed bottling, it's okay.
Because I know for me, when we're doing that initial tasting, all I'm focused on is, does it need more sweetness or not? That's all I'm thinking about.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the general gist. We don't really think of much amendments and adjustments at that time.
Right.
Where I think that might be a good way to go. You know, it opens up a whole new way of doing things.
Yes. I'm also thinking, and this may be because mango makes my brain go to the tropics, and then when my brain goes to the tropics and beverages, I'm thinking about mixed fruit beverages. And so what other fruits would go good with mango? And of course, I'm in the midst of passion fruit season here, and I'm like, oh, passion fruit mango.
Yeah, but we got something coming with passion fruit all on its own. We're not sure yet.
Yeah, but we can go crazy. Crazy!
I don't know that I want to add passion fruit to this. I tasted the passion fruit. I think I'd like to keep this mango. Thank you. So.
Time for numbers.
Yeah, okay. Do you want a little bit more to secure it
that
for science?
That last sip, the lingering sensation on my tongue was 100% mango. That was really nice.
Yeah. This is another one of those that the more you explore it, the more you'll start to appreciate it. And I think that's true with a lot of dry beverages. On the surface, you might be like, oh, whoa, that's too dry. But force yourself, if you have to keep trying it, and you'll start to appreciate it. Because I know me, just a few years ago, there's no way I would have even wanted to touch this.
I have a weird thought. I wonder if that's a cultural bias. Because as Americans, no hate, please, lots of our foodstuffs, lots of the things that we intake are just packed full of sugar, regardless of what they are. It's kind of ridiculous when you start thinking about it.
It's possible.
Where in other parts of the world, they don't do that.
Yeah.
And so they might have a better appreciation of this beverage as it is because they don't have that push upon them bias towards the overly sweet.
Actually, that's a really good question. I mean, tell me like where you live. And do you prefer dry or sweet? Because it's an interesting thing. We hear from people all the time, oh, I love dry beverages or I love sweet beverages. And I never really know like where they're from. I never put a geographical note to that. That makes a lot of sense though.
It does.
That's really interesting. I'd love to tabulate those results too and know like, okay, like I'm gonna math the heck out of this. That's awesome. If you guys would really tell me that, that'd be really, really cool. Now I need more to taste before I can give a score.
Numbers.
See, you made me.
I derailed you. I'm so sorry.
I got thinking about numbers and data.
Got excited.
People say that I remind them of Adam from Mythbusters.
Mythbusters. Yeah.
When in reality, I'm Jamie.
He's Jamie. Yeah.
With a touch of Alton Brown.
I think I'm more Adam.
Yes, you are the zany, wacky.
Excited.
You would wear a costume and dance around.
I would. I totally would.
I don't do those things. I'm more the looking at her. Why do you have to do that? You know, I'm Jamie. Seriously, I just don't wear the white shirt and the beret.
You broke me. That was funny.
There you go.
Mango.
Yeah, I'm starting to appreciate this. It has a brightness to it that really does help. The acidity level is nice and high, making it very crisp and refreshing.
The sweetness lasted longer that time.
Yeah, seems like the more you drink of it, I guess we're gonna have to go through like 4 bottles to really start to like this one.
What, this was 14? What was this? No,
It's 12.
12, okay.
12, 14, I mean, you know, you're still gonna get cracked if you drink 4 bottles of it. Anyway, I think I have a number. Are you ready?
Yes.
1, 2, 3,
7.
6.5. I was debating between 6.5 and 7.
I was bouncing between 6 and 7. 6, 7, 6, 7, 6, 7.
I'm the low person, so I'll go first. Just give a quick synopsis. The reason I didn't go higher is because I do feel that this could improve. If it wasn't as watery, I think it would be better. And I think a touch of sweetness might have helped. The problem is, now let me explain my thinking why I didn't go along with back sweetening. In order to get this to a proper sweetness level that I would appreciate, it would have had to be like 20 points different because it's 0.990. So to get it to like a 1.010 where you'd actually taste that sweetness, that's almost half a pound of sugar added to this. That sounds like a lot of sugar to me, sounds like more than is necessary, making it kind of like, really? I think she was right. I think the harsh edges are going to age out, and I think you had a good point.
Another reason why I opted not to back sweeten it is because my brain currently lives in Rumville, where everything is rum and rum is good. And so
Rum is sweet though.
Mango, you know, you could put rum in that. I'm thinking right now I want to put some coconut rum in this and see what happens. But that led me to want to back sweeten it with brown sugar rather than white sugar. And we don't have any brown sugar right now.
You're right, we don't. We should get some.
So,
Alexa, add brown sugar to the shopping list.
I apologize to everyone's devices that have now been alerted.
Yeah, I may or may not have done that on purpose.
But maybe you need some brown sugar too.
Yeah, see? Everybody needs brown sugar once in a while. By the way, brown sugar is just white sugar with molasses added back to it. It used to actually be a different thing. So, you know, it's fine. You can just mix molasses and white sugar if you really want to. But overall, I thought this was good. I don't think this is the most spectacular thing we've ever made, but I'm starting to adapt to a drier brew myself. I'm trying to on purpose for many reasons. If you're not, you might want to back sweeten this one. Make sure you pasteurize. I
have a feeling, I'm going to project into the future Terica, take note, that we're going to wait on this. We're going to wait for the 1 year tasting and see if what we think might happen actually does happen. And if it does happen, this recipe is good to go. 2 thumbs up. But if it doesn't happen, then we're going to revisit it and try to push it up a notch.
Or I'll just make some simple syrup and pour some in a glass when I have some. See, that's the other option. If it's too dry and you want it a little sweeter, add sugar to it. There's a movie where a guy was adding sugar to his wine and people like got all irritated with them. Yet the other people at the table were drinking a sweet wine. I'm like,
it's a thing.
He ordered a dry wine, you ordered a sweet wine.
Relax.
He added sugar. Guess what? You're both doing the same thing. I mean, it's sugar is sugar is sugar. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching and have a great day.
Bye-bye.